The news cycle should make that fact obvious. Our country's changed, and there is no going back, and nor do I want to go back at this point, because what's been hiding in the darkness for decades now is shamelessly flaunting itself in broad daylight, trying to shove a nefarious agenda down everybody's throat. And so finally, people are waking up. People that should have woken up years ago. But the bad guys, they have about 95% of the levers of power under their control: media, medical, education, even in many cases the church. So you and I, we're like the ragtag rebel alliance, trying to take down the evil empire in their Death Star with some rickety old X-Wings.
That's no moon.
And this causes fear. Fear is the #1 killer of a good man's usefulness. And the world is going to give you a million ways to distract yourself, numb yourself, so that you don't even run away from your battle. You never engage it in the first place. If you want to defeat these fears, you've got to face them. The next round of Warrior Mind, Body, and Soul starts on April 16th. Guys, over 70 days, we're going to focus on rising above our fear into faith, fortitude, and function, because nothing kills fear like action. That's your function. And becoming consistent with a lifestyle of boldness that can take the hits and even thrive from them, that's fortitude. And trusting God has a purpose and plan for you in these times, that's faith. So join us for this next round at warriormbs.com, and you can schedule a call with me right there to learn more.
Today on the Flyover Conservative Podcast, we have a true warrior.
Yes.
A warrior, mind, body, and spirit. Former professional baseball player. I consider a great spiritual leader and a great voice in the time that we're living in. His show helps people explore truth, expose deception, and inspire courage. And
Yes,
I think we need
that sounds incredible.
a lot more of all three of those things. The one, the only Jeremy Slayden.
Best intro in all of podcasting. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Man, everyone's fired up to have you. Little Mike's fired up.
He is.
He says the only thing that could make you more manly is if you could take more vitamins and sprout a legitimate mustache.
Yeah, like his.
Yeah, I need that in my life. Thank you for the bobblehead. Love it.
That's all little Mike had to say there. He says he's all right. He's halfway there.
Yeah,
He's got a little baby stubble that's nice. It's cute, but if he could get a full Magnum PI thing going, you could really speak honestly in the male department.
I've been looking for something to take my program to the next level, David, and I think you nailed it. So thank you for that. I'll start
But
growing
that's
it
not
out.
me. That's little Mike.
Yeah, little Mike.
My wife's gonna love it.
Yeah, I think you're doing fantastic. I want to you do this great job of sports, athletics, physical, all these things, but you also bring in a spiritual component into the role of men, in our world. Actionable items, not actual items that they can take to get better physically, mentally, but spiritually. I want to bring this up because there's a vacuum in most homes in America of male leadership, of actually even the idea of like a man being the leader in his own home. And I'd say even maybe, a man being a leader in his own personal life, leading it well. It's a little bit lost, but even a step beyond that, a man being a spiritual leader in his home. And that being a little bit of a vacuum. And there's the Bible's full of examples of men being strong spiritual leaders, in their homes, but it's become an anomaly, I'd say, in our culture today, and something that's definitely not talked about enough.
It was talked a lot about, before we started recording, we were actually touching on it. It was talked a lot about in the 90s with the Promise Keepers. We were seeing a big movement with that, but it has been
John Eldridge.
Yep, John
running
Eldridge.
Running around in the woods with a spear,
Exactly.
And even those movements in the 90s, they were reactionary because the attack on men was already going on, the spiritual attack especially. So there's been this attack on men and masculinity in general for a long time because the Marxists, the godless, those out there that somehow found their way into power through some kind of 100-year plan, marched through history, they hate strong men in general. But spiritually strong men is an especially powerful enemy to them.
Yep.
So that's why there's such an attack. But the Promise Keepers movement and John Eldridge, the reason they were so popular at that time was because the attack was already going on, and they provided a great buffer and a great place for men to go and become empowered. But those were huge stadium events. Now John Eldridge's book, Wild at Heart's a different thing. It's a great book.
Phenomenal.
But the Promise Keepers events, part of the problem with that was you had a lot of men get together, get really riled up, and there was a lot of good that came from it. But then the event is over. You go back home, you go back to your job, and you turn on the same television that you had on, before you left for the event.
Yeah.
And, we need communities where we are coming together as men, and it's an ongoing process. And I do believe that the mind, the body, and the soul, they work together. So men who are just strong physically, yes, that's good. And you may feel energetic and all of that. But if you're off spiritually, you could actually do a lot of damage. So you need to have those things working in tandem, your mind, your body, your soul, and going to the Father above for direction on how to channel those things.
Man, that's really good and so true.
So on your channel, you discuss you dive into these things. You had on a lot of the people that starred in the upcoming movie. We went to the premiere night of it. Come Out in Jesus' Name.
Yes.
With Greg Locke and the whole cast of characters. You've dive into that stuff. What is it that kind of really draws you? Like a moth to a light. They're attracted to the light. When you're looking at topics, you're looking at things going on in the world. What is it that interests you? Because professional athlete, the spiritual stuff, you're leading men in small groups on these 70-day resets that you do. When you're looking at topics, what is it that you're most drawn to?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'm a generalist. So if you go to my J Slay USA channel, say on Rumble, which is where you were, it's a broad base of things. And a lot of that depends on who's being brought to me, or maybe somebody on Instagram will say, hey, I've got a friend who was a Navy SEAL. And by the way, this is going to happen, who's like the Navy SEAL that allegedly shot and killed Osama bin Laden. Him and I are talking, and he's going to come on my show. And then he wants me to come on his podcast. That kind of fell in my lap, and that's of interest. But I would say, I'm always interested in men's empowerment, because that's an ongoing battle, especially spiritual empowerment, becoming grounded again, having a band of brothers around you. That's always a topic of interest. But just like with Greg Locke and the Come Out in Jesus' Name, I think there's a shift happening. And I had a behind the scenes standing interview. I've got it on video. I haven't released it yet, but a little 3-minute standing interview. And I said, Greg, you were really passionate and probably still are about the political and cultural battle that we're in. But now you're talking about casting out demons in Jesus' name. How should we feel about that? Because a lot of people look to you for political direction along with the spiritual guidance. Yeah. He said, man, none of that's changed, but he's like, I got to tell you, I feel like we are always battling against the princes and principalities of evil, but rather than call out corrupt politicians that I may never meet, I want to call out the demon of the person right in front of me. And I think there's power in that. And I don't just mean, casting out demons, but I mean the people around you, your local community, your family, your own psyche, yourself.
Yep.
We have to get back to focusing on those battles that we have some responsibility for, because I can't help if a plant explodes in Texas. I can't help if Minnesota has become a sanctuary state for children's sex operations. I can't help those things. I can battle against it. I can pray against it. I may be able to write a letter to a state senator or something, but I think at this point, and Clay was on my show last night, Clay Clark, he's kind of going that same way where it's like, we don't really know what's going to happen. So let's focus on getting ourselves right spiritually before the Lord, because these are some crazy times.
Yeah.
Man, that is a really great point. We talk about trying to save America, but we really need to save Americans. And starting with ourselves, I think that is a really important thing. That's what I love what Greg Locke is doing with that, because, truly getting the body of Christ free and able to do what God's called us to do. I think it's really important, and spiritually starting there. And you had, addressed, even before we started recording, you started talking about even, taking actions in your own local community. You can, like you said, you can see something in Minnesota or Texas, but what's going on in your own community that you can actually make a difference about?
That's right. Yeah. I mean, this is a perfect nation to actually be able to take action on a local level, because it's a government of, by, and for the people. Now, I know our federal government has mostly forgotten that with the bureaucracies and the deep state and all of that, but your local county, your state, you can be involved directly, and your voice matters there. And that's the way that our government was set up. So like in the Warrior MBS program, right now, one of the bold moves for the week is pick a bill that's local, that you really believe in, like a state bill, and write your state senator about that bill in support or against, and then show proof that you did it to get your points for the week. So it's a way to get involved locally. But yes, I mean, I feel like we must attack those things that are within our control, because you can just get overwhelmed. I almost got black pilled before starting the Warrior program, because I was just, every day it was some other news story of craziness, and it can really wear on you. So you do have to get back to, how am I sleeping? Am I addicted to anything? how's my body, how's my family, how's my relationship with my wife.
Yes.
All of those things matter more on a daily basis than, well, the government still wants me to take the Pfizer jab. That's kind of a one and done decision. Just don't take it and move
Don't do
on.
it. Yep. That's really good. Colton was showing your site there, jslayusa.com. When you go there, let's talk a little bit about the Warrior Program. What is that and who can be involved in it?
Well, first of all, go to warriormbs.com/flyover, because that's where I'm giving everybody a deal.
Oh,
wow.
It's good.
Yeah, warriormbs.com/flyover. There we go. Now it says the next round starts April 1st. We're going to bump that to April 15th. So you've got a little bit more time to get this discount. And the sooner you
get
sign
the
up,
taxes
the better.
behind them, and then moving forward, it's like a new year.
Yes.
Wait, say again. I'm sorry.
They get the taxes behind them, and
There
then
you
they
go.
can move forward. It's a clean slate.
Yeah. So it's a 70-day program, and the biggest feather in my cap about it is the results that we've had. Guys show up. I would say 70% of them show up because they look down and say, "Wow, I got to get back in shape. What happened?" And they do. I mean, that's an incredible transition that we're seeing with almost everybody that joins, whether they want to get stronger or leaner or what have you, but their sleeping patterns are improving, their energy levels are improving, and they're having some fun while they're doing it because it's a competition. So, all these guys are broken into small teams. They're competing against each other, and we're like-minded as well. I put some barriers to entry. So there's really not anybody with blue hair in support of Joe Biden within this program. So you can feel comfortable being yourself.
That is really
MBS,
fun.
that stands for mind, body, spirit. So warrior, mind, body, and spirit. And it's good that you're hitting things from all those directions. It's a kind of a joke in our family about how completion creates energy. And sometimes you get on a muddy slope and you're just kind of sliding down, and you just need some kind of branch to grab a hold of. And it's like, okay.
Yes.
And so I just joke, like, just find one right thing to do. It might be like, is there clothes in the dryer? Go fold them, or go make your bed. Like just find one, and all of a sudden it's amazing how that's one thing. It's like, okay, all right, I got it, because it brings your focus from stuff far away you can't control to, like, okay, I can fold some clothes.
Right.
When my wife comes home, she's gonna be like, "Well, I folded all the laundry."
Yeah. Or I did the dishes.
You did the dishes. It's like a low bar, but but something. And it's like, you do that. It's like, okay, what's the, now you got some momentum. It's kind of tough to clean. Right. Tough to clean the garage, but I'll do one thing, and before you know it, it's like you got that second win. You kind of provide that just in people's whole life with some accountability.
I try. I think you hit on a very important thing, and I think what we do, especially, it may be true of women as well, but I know of men and I know of me, is we build up this idea of what it's supposed to look like. How's my workout supposed to look? How am I supposed to feel? And it's this it's this idea of perfection. And because in our head, it's like, well, if I'm not feeling like a 9 or a 10 today, I'm just not going to start. The truth is, if you're feeling like a 3 or 4, and it doesn't matter, as long as you drop down and do that first push-up. Do that first next right thing. And just like you said, it builds the momentum. It gets you going. I remember when I was in sales, the hardest thing is to start making sales calls. But once you make one call, it's way easier to make the second one and the third one.
True.
So yeah, this helps kind of kick guys. It's like a spark plug to get people going on that next right step.
I love it. Again, you can go to Rumble, JSlayUSA on Rumble. You can find his .com, JSlayUSA.com. Or if you're interested in the Warrior Program, go to warriormbs.com/flyover for a discount. Thank you so much, Jeremy, for your time. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for what you're doing to help save Americans. Really, you're making a difference in the lives of people, and that's what we need.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys as well. Keep going strong. I love your show. And man, I look forward to coming back sometime.
So I joined the program overweight and out of shape. And I was in the middle of moving across the country, and I didn't think I could do it. But actually, it kept me grounded through the whole program. Great diet, great soul building ops, great people you get to meet. Pretty awesome. And I may be going round 2. You never know. And who knows, it may be round 3. So, but good job, Jeremy. And if you guys are thinking about joining, definitely jump on board. It's worth it.
Well, guys, it's fantastic to be here. I'm honored to be in front of this group with such specialists, experts, faithful people. I know a lot about what Anna was just talking about in my own life, and I'm going to get into a little bit of that. But I think God uses interesting ways to keep us humble. So I want you guys to hold in your mind as I'm talking 2 things, okay? deceptions in your life on a personal level and deceptions in the culture and in America, and how the same principles that apply to our personal life and freedom can apply to our public life and our national life and freedom. So we talk a lot about deception in rooms like this, right? And Dr. Robert Malone, as many of you know, he famously and recently said on the Joe Rogan podcast, he said that we are a people under mass formation psychosis, right? Yeah. So I don't even have to say to this group what that is, but to the people at home, mass formation psychosis is when a large segment of society loses contact with reality. Now, typically these people, they have been seduced, they've been hypnotized by some kind of leader or a mainstream narrative and their solutions, and they can be led anywhere regardless of the data proving otherwise. Am I right? And we see this today as even the words mass formation psychosis. If you try to look that up, it's being censored and suppressed by big tech right now. So it's affected all of us, guys, because we see it with our friends, our family. It's created conflict because as we look around us, we think, how can these people that we know and love remain deceived by these lies? You know, C.S. Lewis explained this well when he said, as a man is moving closer to God, he understands very well the evil that is still left within him. But as a man is moving further from the divine, he can no longer see at all the rot that is still left within him. Okay? So as people move away from God or as they numb out, they no longer have discernment. They no longer have peace in their life. And guys, I know about that very well. Okay? When I left baseball, or actually right before I left baseball, I was right at the top. I got invited to big league spring training. I was leading the team in home runs and RBIs, being an off-the-bench guy. I remember Charlie Manuel goes, "Hey, Slayden, grab a bat." So I go up and grab a bat, and I'm already playing really well, just coming off the bench. I hit a grand slam. I'm running around the bases. I get to second base. I lose all feeling in my right leg. So much like I walked up here today with a limp, I kind of pimped it, around the bases, hoping that nobody knew anything was wrong. Well, that was the beginning of the end of my pro career. I played a little bit longer, but I ended up having a major back surgery, and I found myself lost. My identity was lost because I'd identified my whole life with success in baseball. And so I'm in a big city. I've got this new job that I don't have the emotional energy for. And I started to find myself taking the shortcut to immediate gratification and temporary comforts. And that came in the form of sexual novelty and substances. Because sometimes you got to use the substances to numb out and to feel okay about making these decisions that 10 years prior I would have looked at myself and said, I'll never do that. I'll never darken the door of a place like that. But I did darken those doors. And life became very painful. But the pain was a gift. Because that pain was the fertile soil from which my recovery could grow. And when I looked in the mirror during those tough times where I was really, going in a direction I knew that was wrong, I didn't recognize the person who was looking back. My life was getting smaller and smaller by the day, and I knew it. So it was going to require some hard choices. And I knew that I was going to have to step into those hard choices. So I began to get counseling. I began to tell the truth. I began to seek out help. And it got harder before it got easier. And I knew that I was going to eventually have to tell the person that would hurt the most about my acting out behaviors, and that was going to be my wife. And so after counseling and after getting to a pretty healthy place, I'll never forget sitting down with her, my beautiful wife. I wish I had a picture. And having to tell her all the things that I had done. And we had to walk through that painful road together. But I can tell you guys this. By taking those steps and by telling the truth, getting honest, I now have the most wonderful relationship with her and with my two little boys that I've ever had in my entire life. That's God. That's God. And I want to say that before I told her, many on my team, friends, acquaintances, many of them told me not to tell the truth to my wife. They felt that maybe that some decisions like that, the pain could just be too great. But instead, I trusted the still small voice in my heart, okay? And then I saw what was going on in this nation. Now, I've been attracted to truth my whole life. Whether I've walked in it always or not is a different matter. But as I looked around the world, especially starting in 2020, like a lot of you that woke us up, right? Well, I had already gone through my period of personal pain and telling the truth and getting recovery and seeing the fruit that comes from getting honest. So I knew I've got 2 little boys at home now. They're going to grow up in the world that we leave for them. There's a blanket of mass deception going on. We were seeing mass formation psychosis before we'd heard that word, right? So I knew that I needed to step into this. So I launched a platform a year ago called Slay USA. You can find me on almost any platform. I'd prefer it if you go to Rumble and look me up on there, Slay USA. I interview bold and courageous leaders and experts in their field who are not afraid to take a stand. But enough on that. It was the same thing, though. Many on my team, friends, acquaintances, many of them told me not to make the choice to leave my steady job with a stable income. But I knew in my heart that this is what I had to do. So I stepped into it. Now, I've got 5 minutes left. I better hurry up. Those principles that applied to my personal recovery, I think they apply to the recovery of our world. We have to get truthful. We have to get honest. Ronald Reagan in 1964 said, "This is a time for choosing." And I think his words are as relevant today as they were then, maybe more so. Reagan said, "There's not a man alive who would carelessly send another person's son to war." And that is the real issue that makes all of the problems we might discuss academic. Unless we realize that we're in a war that must be won. Those of us who would trade in our freedoms for the soup kitchen of the welfare state have told us that they have a utopian solution of peace without victory. They call their policy accommodation. And they say if we'll only avoid any direct confrontation with this enemy, well, they'll forget their evil ways and learn to love us. It's not true, is it? So we have to stand up and tell the truth. And it's so sad because leaders, religious leaders, from the Catholic Pope to many of the greatest minds in Christian Protestantism, have chosen that path of accommodation, of appeasement. And you know who sees that? The enemy, Satan. He looks at us and he knows the decision that we're going to make, because from our side he's heard voices pleading for peace at any price, or better red than dead. Or as one recent commentator put it, "I'd rather live with my mask on my knees than die standing on my feet." And therein lies the road to war, because those voices, they don't speak for the people in this room, do they? This standing up for truth goes for our beautiful, beloved Constitution as well. Do we even believe in the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness any longer? You know, there's no coincidence why it's in that order. Because without your life, you can have no liberty. And without your liberty, there can be no happiness. Winston Churchill said, "The destiny of man cannot be measured in material computations." When great forces are on the move throughout this world, we learn that we are spirits, not animals. And he said there's something going on in time and space and beyond time and space, which for you and I in this room, that spells duty. You and I have a rendezvous with destiny. We'll preserve for our children this, the last best hope of man on earth, or we'll sentence them to 1,000 years of darkness. We're at war now with the greatest enemy that's ever faced mankind in his long climb from the swamp to the stars. And it's been said that if we lose this war, and in so doing lose this great way of freedom of ours, history's going to record with the greatest astonishment that those of us that had the most to lose did the least to prevent it from happening. My fellow Christian warriors, set yourselves apart from this crooked and depraved generation. Be saints. We weren't made to fit in. We were born to stand out. And that is the freedom I wish for all of you. Freedom from sin. Freedom from our weaknesses. Freedom from the slavery that sin produces in all of us. That is the freedom worth dying for. It kind of reminds me of the words Mel Gibson intoned in his Academy Award-winning film, Braveheart. When he stood before his ragtag army, and he said to them, as I'm going to say to you today. Now, should I do it in a Scottish accent? That's what my dad said. Wallace said, I see before me an army of my countrymen here in defiance of tyranny. You have come to fight as free men, and free men you are. What would you do without freedom? Will you fight? This man says, no, against that we will run, and we will live. Aye, fight and you may die. Run and you'll live for at least a while. And dying in your beds many years from now, would you be willing to trade all the days from this day to that for one chance, just one chance, to come back here and tell our enemies that they may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom? Every man dies. Not every man really lives. You. We must fight for that authentic freedom and live, my friends. By God, we must live. And with Christ as your sword and the Holy Spirit as your shield, may you join Saint Michael and all the angels in defending God's truth and sending Lucifer and his henchmen straight right back to hell where they belong. We are entering the storm of all storms. Yes, the storm is upon us, but not without our rudder, Jesus. And in the words of Reagan, evil is powerless if the good are unafraid. God bless you.